Hello, welcome back. Right, as you can see, today's comparison, three systems, Amstrad, Commodore 64, Zelich Spectrum, is Death Wish 3, a 1987 release from Gremlin Graphics, and of course based on the Death Wish 3 film starring Charles Bronson. Death Wish films, right, okay. The first couple were okay. The third one I class as so bad it's actually good, and 4 and 5 are just, well, it's a long time since I've seen them, but I remember them being quite poor. But anyway, game came out of Death Wish 3, and I bought it back then, and I really enjoyed it. Now, I do have experience of the Amstrad version because my mate David had it, but as usual, the premise of this video is just to look at all three of them together, see what the differences and similarities are, and have a bit of a discussion about it. Of course, if you know the game at all, please shout up with your recollections of it. Now, in relation to other games, I have decided to draw up a schedule of sorts, which I'm no doubt going to fail to stick to quite spectacularly. I'm trying to get Wizard's Lair done for the Spectrum, Amstrad and Commodore 64. I've managed to get it for both the Commodore and the Spectrum, but the Amstrad version I can't find anywhere. The site that I've used to get all the other games from, there is a version of it on there. When I download it and try to convert it onto the card, it won't read it. It says the file's corrupt, so I'm going to have to wait until I can find a version of it. Right, so here's what we've got coming up in the future at some point, hopefully. There are good games and bad games in this list, so don't sit there and go, what? Right, I'm going to do all 4 versions of Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy, because they're easy to do, really. Death Wish 3 you're just about to see. Wizard's Lair I'm hoping to get done. Samurai Warrior, which I have covered on the Spectrum and wasn't particularly impressed with. I'm going to do Miami Vice. Yes, I'm going to go that one. 1942, Kane, Firelord. Kane is going to be a 4 systems version because I've got it on the BBC Micro as well. Warbringer for the Commodore 64 only, which is as a result of a recommendation from a subscriber called Terraspent, who has suggested that I try it out. It's he called it Combat Crazy, but when I typed Combat Crazy into one of the search engines, it came up with into YouTube, it comes up with Warbringer. So I think it's an otherwise known as Barbarian, Tempest, and whatever other ones I can think of at the time. Right, this is just purely intended to give you a show of the game and what it's all about. Amstrad version, ZX left and right, OK for up and down, and enter to go into houses through the street, the copy button to change your weapon, and space to fire. So, let's get into it. Righty-ho, here we go, Amstrad CPC version of Death Wish 3. Something's just fallen off the chair, don't know what that was, that's put me off straight away. Released by Gremlin Graphics 1987, the plot being, I don't know, I can't remember the plot. Wasn't it something to do with his mate got killed, and when he went to go and visit him, and gangs were terrorising the neighbourhood, and he's just thought, sod this, I've had enough of that. So it seems to be Paul Kersey against the world. Now, it's fire to start, which on the Amstrad is base. Right, so let's go. There I am, in the blue, and I've got walking the streets armed with a massive arsenal, basically, of shotguns, pistols, machine guns, and a bazooka, which is absolutely great. Now, the game in itself is really sort of quite shallow. You can see the map at the bottom. Because it's blue, that means it's showing me where the weapons are located. If I press M, it changes it to yellow. Now, this game is incredibly violent. What I love about the Amstrad version is the really sort of vivid colours. Look, I've just reduced everyone to a pile of mush. The sort of paramedics coming on scene, sort of undertakers, and taking away all the remains. I mean, that's just a brilliant touch. I've always loved that. Of course, you can shoot the cops, you can shoot the little old ladies, but you cannot shoot either the prostitutes, these buxom wenches walking along scratching their asses, or the sort of ambulance technicians. And you encounter a variety of other people throughout the course of the game. who all need to be killed. Now if I press W here, I can look out the window and get this kind of Operation Wolf style sort of thing going on, and it's really good. Now the game is incredibly sort of shallow. There's not a lot to it. It's just a basic sort of map game, find weapons. It doesn't ever seem to be able to sort of finish. There doesn't seem to be, well, not that I've ever seen, an ending to it. It just goes on and on and on. But what makes it great is the vivid use of colours. I mean, basically what you've got here is you've got a nutter in a bright blue suit, carrying a load of weapons, wandering around, slaughtering everyone. And everyone else is dressed in like greens and yellows and dark blues and stuff. It looks like a riot at a Shaboddy Waddy concert. It's really, really a laugh. There's not a lot to do in Death Wish 3 other than just sort of wander around, pick up ammo, you can see I've got a bulletproof vest at the bottom right, which is registering any kind of damage I'm taking. But the game is fun, and it's incredibly violent, and as you can see, as you've seen, the rocket launcher just sends people into pockets and piles of goo, basically. But it's so much fun. And the machine gun, if you keep on firing it at someone, you can get this sort of rat-a-tat. That's brilliant. I love it. Worth wasting all your ammunition for. So yeah, that's... Oh, right, I can't go out there. Rocket launcher indoors. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, the game is, you know, incredibly violent, but I don't think... I mean, I do have the Spectrum copy somewhere. I should really have checked beforehand. It's not a game that was certificated, you know, received a 15 or anything. And I bought it in the shops, and I would have been 15 at the time this came out, 1987. So I'm sort of doubting it. But yeah, come on, Amstrad owners. I want to know your thoughts on this game. Whether you liked it, whether or not you loathed it. Now the music in it is really good as well. This track by Ben Daglish is really, really top notch. And see, I'm out of ammunition and guns now. So I've just got to run away, keep running away, which is going to be easier said than done because all these thugs are everywhere. So I've got to go around and try and find some weapons or ammunition somewhere, and it don't look like that's going to be easy. So like I said, really, really quite not a lot to the game at all, but it was always fun for a 15-20 minute blast. Always really, really good fun. I always thoroughly enjoyed playing Death Wish 3 because there wasn't a lot to it. You didn't have to think about much. Which is great. That's the kind of game I like. As you can tell by now, if you've watched my videos regularly, you'll know that I'm absolutely crap at most kind of games, but this kind of mindless, just run around being a complete cock, I can do, and I enjoy that. Right, Amstrad version of Death Wish 3. Amstrad owners, please let me know what your memories of that particular version for your machine are. I'm going to move on now to the Commodore 64, which is, I believe, more or less identical, but that's what we're here to sort of check out, the differences and similarities. What I love about the Amstrad version, the music, the bright, vivid, colourful graphics, the really gory graphics. I mean, look, you can see whenever he gets shot, you know, you get, you can see blood spurt out the other side of him. It's really, really good fun, and the poor old deers hobbling along, they can be killed, but the prostitutes can't. I think that's full of humorous touches like that. Right, moving on. Hello, welcome back. Right, Commodore 64 version of Death Wish 3. Now, playing this with joysticks. So just going to take a look and see how it differs from what you've seen already. Now, you can see the game is considerably sort of darker than the Amstrad version. The graphics are nice in themselves, but slightly blockier. And although the mush effect when you take someone out with a bazooka is absolutely really nice. Now I've made criticisms before. You can see I'm using the bazooka there. When I did the Commodore 64 version of Target Renegade, I commented that there was no sort of thumping noises when you sort of thwacked someone, and similarly in this, there's no noise made when you squish someone, which in the Amstrad and Spectrum versions you got. Now, I thought that was you know, sort of disappointing. It's something that had been left out, but apparently it's something to do with right, I'm inside now. Let's pick up some pistol ammo. Got the shotgun now. That's to do with the Commodore 64C, which I use. Apparently the SID chip is different, which mean from the one in the bread bin sort of C64s, which means that you don't get that sort of thwacking sound, you know, whereas if it was on a bread bin Commodore 64, I would. Now, if someone can tell me on the bread bin style machine, if that's the case and there are actually those sounds, then please do. Now, like I say, it's a lot darker than the Amstrad version, and the Amstrad version, I have to say, looks cleaner than this. I mean, they both play exactly the same. In this one, it's control to swap weapons. Let's just machine gun him down. Yeah, it's basically the exact same game, just with slightly blockier graphics. Now you can hear the tune playing in the background. Again, it's a really nice tune. Again, as the Amstrad version by Ben Daglish. I have to say, I actually prefer the Amstrad version of it. The Commodore 64, it seems a little bit grungier, if you know what I mean, sort of a little bit less clear and vivid than the than the Amstrad version, but it's still really, really good. You know, it doesn't sort of detract from the game at all. But yeah, those are my observations. The graphics, although colourful, they're darker, they're a bit blockier. Oh, I've got no weapons left. Come on, man in bright blue suit. Let's go and hunt some weapons now. There, I ain't going to find any there, am I? Or there. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to basically more or less repeat myself with the Spectrum version because it's exactly the same game. It is quite shallow. How it never caused any kind of uproar, bearing in mind the likes of Grand Theft Auto, Doom, etc. were blamed for all sorts of ills when they were released. And I don't remember anything causing any kind of uproar back in the day. You know, there wasn't even really many eyebrows raised when Samantha Fox Strip Poker was... there was other things raised when Samantha Fox Strip Poker was released. But there we go. That's just... There's no point sort of like going on an awful lot more about the Commodore 64 version because it's almost exactly the same apart from those differences. So Commodore 64 owners, yeah, please tell me if that's correct about the SID chip and whether or not on a bread bin there are those kind of sound effects, etc. As you can see, Mr. Curse's quest to reclaim the streets on the Commodore 64 version has failed spectacularly. Right, moving on to the Spectrum. Okay, welcome back. Right, the final of the three versions, the Zelich Spectrum version, which is the version I know the best because it's the one I bought back in the day. Right, Z, X, left and right, OK, up and down. Space to fire, C to change weapons, M for the map, W to look through the windows. Okay, the music's exactly the same as you can see in here, but obviously graphically the Spectrum version is different from the other two. The main character, I think, although lacking the colour of the other two, is actually more nicely defined. Let's go into the building. As are the other sort of baddie graphics. They're a lot sort of crisper, I think. And that's not to say that the other versions' graphics are bad. They're not. But although this has the Spectrum's usual problems when it comes to graphics, they are clearer. See, in the Spectrum version, you can't blow up the... Oh, yes, you can blow up the old ladies. Oh, sorry, Granny. Shooting out the windows. Now, I really like the rendition on the Spectrum version. The tune. It's really good. And it's, you know, other than the differences in sort of colour and graphics definition, it's exactly the same game. Although, like I say, you know, the sprites are sort of clearer. So we can go up, we can go down, we can check the map. Map is for, yellow is for where the riots are, blue is for where weapons are located or can be found. And there's none in that house. Pretty law-abiding folks who live there. Right, so there is really, I mean, much point doing, showing you much further on this, because it is exactly the same game as the other versions. It was just to show you all three of them side by side. Okay, so with that, let's go to the outro. Okay, just going to leave the Spectrum version sort of playing in the background there. So, yeah, Death Wish 3 I always thought was a really fun game, whilst the fun of it lasts. It's always good to load up for sort of 10 minutes of being an absolute knob running around the city causing havoc. Kind of reminiscent of how I used to play the early Grand Theft Auto games, Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. I never used to bother really doing the missions. I just used to run around to see how much chaos I could create, which was usually quite a bit. And that's what made it enjoyable. And that's what's fun about the Death Wish game. There isn't really a sort of ending as such. I've played it for, you know, significantly long periods, and it doesn't seem to ever end. It just seems to keep on going round and round doing the same thing, quelling riots, picking up weapons, etc. And it just goes on and on and on. Now, it does become repetitive fairly quickly, but up until that point, it's always a really good laugh. I've always enjoyed Death Wish 3. All three versions of it play really nicely, and, you know, pointing out any differences is going to seem like nitpicking, really, and I suppose it is, but it's what the purpose of the video was, to see what the differences and similarities are. I really loved the Amstrad's colourful, bright graphics. I loved the sort of soundtrack on it. The Commodore 64 version, the graphics were a lot darker. The soundtrack was a little bit grungier than the kind of jolly sort of action tune that the AY chip of the Spectrum and the Amstrad's music chip produced. So I preferred the Spectrum's music, and I also preferred the Spectrum's definition of the graphics, although the characters were sort of black and grey. I thought they were crisper than the other two versions. And nostalgia is always going to sort of say, I played that version the most, and that would be the version I would automatically go to. I did play the Amstrad version to an extent on my friend's computer a few times, enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Commodore 64 version. It really is the same game across the boards, and any differences, if you pick on them, really are just sort of, you know, nitpicking. Commodore 64 fans and owners, please, if you're able to, confirm or sort of validate what I said in the Commodore 64 section about the lack of sound effects, lack of impact effects when you shot or bazookaed someone. Is that to do with the different SID chip between the bread bin and the 64C, which is what I've got? If you played Death Wish 3 on the bread bin Commodore 64, do you get those sound effects? But having said that, should you play it? Yeah, it's a laugh. It's you know, it's a really good good game, but only in sort of short bursts. You will get bored of it very quickly if you try and sink any kind of time into it, because it's just repetitive. But up until the time that you get bored with it, you're gonna have great fun with it. Running around being an absolute wally is always good fun in video games. It's never caused me to go out and, you know, commit crimes or anything like that, so I don't know what these people harp on about when they go on about violence in video games, etc, etc. Okay, that's it. If you like the video, please let me know. If you wish to subscribe, please do so. But as I always say, if you do subscribe, please take the time to join in the conversation, because that's what it's all about. Thank you ever so much for watching. Take care. Goodbye.